In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, June 24th, here on the Korean Peninsula. Russian data reportedly verifies shipments of some 1.6 million artillery shells from North Korea to Russia for use against Ukraine over the course of 6 months starting last August. And a trilateral multi-domain exercise is supposed to take place among South Korea, Japan and the US, as agreed during the defense talks on the sidelines of a security forum in Singapore this month. Meanwhile, more than 1,300 people lost their lives during this year's Hajj, according to Saudi Arabia's health ministry, and most of them were unauthorized pilgrims who trekked through excruciating heat waves. An American daily says internal Russian data shows that Moscow secured some 1.6 million artillery shells from Pyongyang in the course of 6 months. Our foreign affairs correspondent KPMG has details.
From August to January, more than 74,000 metric tons of material labeled as explosives were distributed from 2 ports in Russia's Far East to 16 sites mainly along the country's western borders near Ukraine, an amount equal to about 1.6 million artillery shells. Citing a new analysis of trade data obtained by C4ADS, a non-profit organization based in Washington, D.C., the Washington Post reported that although the data does not include the origin of the shipments, there is evidence of Russian ship movements between North Korea and Russia during the same period. According to the C4ADS, although documents refer to the cargo as explosives, paperwork at the arrival site indicates that they were, in fact, munitions. Similar patterns were also detected by the Royal United Services Institute, a British think tank that uses satellite imagery to monitor movements between North Korea and Russia. It found 27 shipments between the North Korean port of Dajin and the 2 Russian ports in roughly the same period, estimating that thousands of containers had been moved. Addressing concerns on military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow, South Korea's National Security Advisor Chang Ho-jin said Russia's provision of precision weapons to North Korea would leave no line for Seoul's aid to Ukraine. He emphasized that South Korea's decision on whether to provide weapons to Ukraine depends on Russia, apparently hinting that Seoul would consider delivering lethal weapons to Kyiv if Russia crosses the line. Meanwhile, Russia accused Ukraine of drone and missile attacks in a city in Russian-occupied Crimea. Russian authorities claimed Sunday that at least 3 people were killed, including 2 children, and over 100 were wounded. It said the deadly attack launched by Ukraine involved 5 U.S.-made long-range ATACMS missiles. This comes after the Biden administration in May gave Ukraine permission to use American weapons to strike targets inside Russia. KPMG, Arirang News.
A multi-domain exercise is poised to take place among South Korea, Japan and the US as agreed during top-level defense talks on the sidelines of an annual security forum in Singapore earlier this month. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
A nuclear-powered U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, arrived in Busan over the weekend ahead of a 3-way military exercise between South Korea, the U.S. and Japan. The Freedom Edge exercise aims to strengthen military training against North Korean provocations.
Freedom Edge is a significant exercise because it is an opportunity to practice and cooperate between the United States, Korea, and Japan. With the Theodore Roosevelt, which is one of the most advanced versions of a U.S. aircraft carrier, the trilateral nations will be able to exercise all the aspects of multi-domain operations.
The Freedom Edge exercise features simultaneous drills in surface, underwater, aerial, and cyber warfare. This week's exercise was announced when the defense chiefs of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan met in Singapore earlier this month. The exercise comes as the North's leader Kim Jong-un gained confidence after a one-on-one meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin last week, and on top of that, the signing of a pact that pledges mutual defense assistance in the event of war. Experts say it's possible Pyongyang would react strongly to the exercise.
North Korea has stipulated that any type of joint military exercise between South Korea and the US is a war practice drill, so it's likely the North would respond strongly to the upcoming drills. Pyongyang would also observe US strategic assets and possibly react strongly to that.
North Korea, meanwhile, is expected to hold a key meeting of its ruling Workers' Party this week to discuss follow-up measures to implement the partnership agreement with Russia. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benyamin Netanyahu has shared prospects of shifting some military personnel to Israel's northern border with Lebanon to fight the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. In an interview with a local television network this past Sunday, he claimed the intense part of the armed confrontation with Hamas in Gaza is coming to a close, allowing Israeli troops a chance to better focus on the Hezbollah, whose members have been threatening attacks against key Israeli infrastructure. Netanyahu added hopes that a full-scale war with Hezbollah will be averted, but pledged nonetheless that Israel is prepared to, quote, fight on several fronts. And staying in the region, more than 1,300 people lost their lives during this year's Hajj, according to Saudi Arabia's health ministry, and most of them were unauthorized pilgrims who trekked through excruciating heat waves. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Hajj is an annual Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, the holiest city for Muslims located in Saudi Arabia. The pilgrimage is a mandatory religious duty that must be carried out by all adult Muslims at least once in their lifetime who are physically and financially capable of making the trip. However, this year's Hajj, which ran from June 14th to 19th, turned deadly as Saudi Arabia says over 1,300 people died during the 6-day pilgrimage period this year. Releasing the official figures for the first time, the government said Sunday that 1,301 pilgrims died, mostly due to heat stress. Temperatures above 51 degrees Celsius were recorded during this period, with many people walking long distances under direct sunlight without adequate shelter or comfort. Of the dead, 83% were not authorized to make the pilgrimage. Saudi Arabia requires licenses to legally access Mecca, with 1.8 million issued each year. As licenses can cost several thousand US, many make unauthorized pilgrimages. Those without proper documents don't travel in organized tour buses with air conditioning or easy access to water and food supplies. The permits are allocated to countries on a quota system and are distributed through a lottery. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The income tax deduction rate for the use of credit cards at traditional markets will be raised. The rate, which currently stands at 40%, will be raised to 80% as part of efforts to encourage foot traffic to traditional markets. Also, Seoul's Ministry of SMEs and Startups will seek to revise a regulation to allow for broader use of Onnuri gift certificates. Under the revision, these certificates may be used at all franchises except establishments classified as entertainment to better support small businesses. In fact, come July, the government will share a comprehensive support framework for small business owners. And Korea's LG Electronics has topped TV ratings and reviews by US-based Consumer Reports. 4 out of 8 Best TVs of the Year awards were granted to LG OLED TVs. The awards took into account a range of factors, including picture quality, sound experience, as well as security. Among the top-performing TVs, the LG OLED EBO clinched 87 points, the highest score secured by any evaluated TV. And the second leg of the country's high-speed commuter rail service begins its operation this coming Saturday. The ultimate goal is to bring a number of cities in Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces within commuting range of capitals Seoul. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
The next stop on Seoul's high-speed commuter line is set to open by the end of this month. The Transportation Ministry announced that the GTX-A line will be stopping at Kusong Station starting June 29. It's the next station to open on the GTX-A line following the opening of Suseol in southern Seoul and Seongnam and Dongtan in the neighboring Gyeonggi-do province in March this year. And they're all part of the South Korean government's plan to make it faster for people to commute to their jobs in Seoul. People who get on at Kusong Station will now be able to reach the city in around 15 minutes compared to the 36 minutes on the existing Suin-Bundang line. And it'll cost only 3,950 won, or around $3. As for the rest of the line, the northern section is scheduled to open in the second half of the year, followed by the connection between Seoul Station and Suseol in 2026, and finally the stop at Samsung Station, one of the nation's most used subway stations, in 2028. The government is also hoping that the opening of this station will boost the ridership of the GTX-A line, which is currently lower than expected.
Passengers can transfer from the Suin-Bundang line, which is expected to raise ridership, and it's a station that represents Yongin City.
And ahead of the opening of the new stop on the line, the government also carried out radiation inspections in a move to mitigate concerns about extra electrical substations being built to supply electricity for the GTX lines. According to an official, radiation below the World Health Organization's guidance level of 83.3 microtesla doesn't have any health risks.
The level of radiation detected from the substations just 3 meters away was not only under the WHO's guidance level, but also lower than what's emitted from hairdryers and microwaves.
The tests that were carried out in the electrical substation came to around 2.7 microtesla and on ground level around 0.04 microtesla. With the opening of more stations like this on the GTX-A line scheduled in the coming months, more people will be able to enjoy faster and safer accessibility to the city. 이수진, Arirang News.
In other news, some local governments here are taking it upon themselves to play Cupid in hopes of encouraging couples to start a family. Our Kim Bo-kyung files this report.
A demographic national emergency. Those are the words President Yoon Suk-yeol used recently to describe South Korea's low birth rate crisis. Despite the government's astronomical budget to tackle the low birth rate, the total fertility rate, the average number of expected births from a woman in her lifetime, dropped to an all-time low of 0.72 in 2023. Along with the central government's efforts to encourage people to start families, local governments too are making all-out efforts, coming up with their own ways of addressing the birth rate in their regions. One of them is Seongnam City, whose own mayor has become a matchmaker. Dubbed Solomon's Choice, a mass blind date program is being hosted by the city's government to help young people meet each other in a more natural way.
Even if young people are even considering marrying, they are too busy working and cannot actively seek chances to go out to find love. The local government's way of selecting people to join the program is fair and trustworthy, so a lot of participants seem to have trust in us.
The matchmaking program that started last year has already helped to make more than 100 couples, with one of the couples set to get married. That couple was introduced through the program in November last year and will become newlyweds in July. The groom-to-be had no hesitations about recommending the program to others.
On a one-on-one blind date, there is pressure on the guy to lead the conversation. But here, all participants arrive with the intention of actively seeking a match, so they all actively speak. Also, even if you are not into one, you can talk to another person right away, so there are more chances.
Though forming such an atmosphere for people to find love and marry might seem like a limited measure to beat the demographic crisis, an expert says it is necessary.
Against population crisis, local governments have been desperate in hosting additional and new population recently. And there are several ways to do that. First, hosting new public organizations. Second, hosting private companies. And third, promoting marriage. One common reason for not getting married will be not finding a suitable partner.
Once you find your destiny, you need to marry, which is again not simple. According to Statistics Korea, people in their 20s and 30s said not having enough money was the top reason for not marrying. Most of the pressure comes from buying a house, but the money needed for a wedding is also a burden. Private matchmaking company Kayan says the average cost for a wedding preparation, excluding a house, is around $45,000. What's worse is that businesses associated with weddings, including wedding halls and dress and makeup shops, do not have set prices, nor do they clearly disclose costs, making it even harder for uninformed couples. Seoul City's solution was opening public facilities for couples to use for weddings to lessen their burden.
This beautiful hanok is actually a complex cultural space promoting Oriental medicine. But it was transformed into a wedding hall for the day so a couple could have a cost-effective wedding.
Mr. Park and his bride chose this venue through the city's public wedding hall program, which is opening up a total of 28 venues for weddings. The program began during the pandemic as wedding halls closed their doors and wedding hall rental prices surged. The biggest advantage of renting public facilities is that they are cheap comparatively, and prices are transparent.
Many people choose usual wedding halls. We wanted to have a memorable, meaningful event for guests, so we chose this venue through the program. We were able to check the price transparently because they showed us the estimate and contract in detail.
Seoul City aims to expand the program, making it much cheaper for couples.
Couples prefer outdoor weddings, especially in a hanok, followed by parks and museums. We're going to have more of these venues so that more couples can easily make a reservation. In terms of the cost, the rental fee goes up to $860, but we have revised the related ordinance to make it free, starting later this year.
Such measures are seemingly better than nothing at all. However, an expert added that what was of the utmost importance was to tackle core issues.
The most important necessities for young people who want to marry is to have a house, jobs, and the money needed to raise children. Local governments need to come up with detailed benefits such as houses specially allocated for newlyweds, so that they can plan their life, marry, and have a child.
Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in sports news, Korean golfer Yang Hee-young clinched her first major victory at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship this past Sunday. She shot an even par 72 on the final day at Sahali Country Club in Sammamish, Washington, to seal the tournament by 3 strokes. Yang takes home over $1.5 million in prize money and also a spot at the upcoming Paris Summer Olympics. The 34-year-old made her debut on the LPGA Tour back in the year 2008. The Korean-German Chamber of Commerce and Industry believes middle powers like South Korea and Germany can work together to navigate the turbulent waters of current geopolitical tensions and protectionist trade measures. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young covers his remarks.
South Korea and Germany can de-risk from global crises through stronger value-based partnerships and innovation. That's according to Dr. Martin Henkelmann, president of the Korean-German Chamber of Commerce and Industry. At a time when trade protectionism, war and geopolitical conflicts challenge the rules-based global order, he said middle powers like Korea and Germany need to strengthen their solidarity to keep markets free and open. This came as German Vice-Chancellor Robert Habeck visited Seoul last week, before heading to China, where he called out Beijing for its unfair subsidies and support for Russia amid its invasion of Ukraine. Following China, South Korea is Germany's second-largest Asian market, with bilateral trade standing at $33.9 billion last year, according to Korea Customs Service. Henkelmann says de-risking from China presents untapped potential for growth between the two export-dependent economies.
Besides the aspect that both countries are highly industrialized, have a strong GDP that comes from industry, from manufacturing, we are value partners, as we always say. And I think it has been very good sign that Korea has been supporting many of the sanctions in this sanction against Russia. I think de-risking means that we look for opportunities to diversify our sourcing, what we spoke about, that we look on opportunities to have different options for the production.
With overlapping interests in fields like supply chain security, semiconductors, automobiles, and renewable energy, the two energy-intensive economies can collaborate on decarbonisation and innovation across all sectors.
I think offshore wind would be a good possibility here. German turbines, and German knowledge, how we could establish wind parks, combining this with the skills and the knowledge here in the country when it comes to the steelwork, etc., could be a good fit then to go forward for renewable energy. And in other fields, we see that when it comes to quantum physics and when we look on AI, these are all challenges we have together. Our industry has to see how they integrate AI into modern processes of manufacturing and what are the next steps here.
To spur cooperation, Henkelmann says German firms in Korea hope to see more clarity and stability in defining legal terms, especially labour laws, as well as better access to public procurement and certifications for green businesses. He further called for an update to the South Korea-European Union FTA, as Korea and Germany compete and collaborate towards a complementary partnership that reinforces global value chains. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. We begin today in Russia's North Caucasus Republic of Dagestan, where attacks by gunmen on two churches, a synagogue, and police officers left at least 13 dead and another 25 injured. The attacks were reported simultaneously on Sunday in the cities of Derbent and Makhachkala, where the synagogue and churches were also reportedly set ablaze. According to the Dagestan Public Monitoring Commission, 7 law enforcement officers, a priest and a church security guard were killed, while Russian news agency TASS reported that 4 armed militants have also been killed. The head of the Dagestan Republic said that identities of the attackers are being established while urging the public to remain calm. Dagestan, one of the more impoverished parts of Russia, is predominantly Muslim and has previously suffered attacks by a jihadist organization called the Islamic Emirate of the Caucasus. Moving over to Greece, where 13 crew members of a luxury yacht have been charged with arson after fireworks from the yacht allegedly sparked a forest fire on the Greek island of Hydra. According to Greek media, they were charged on Sunday with causing the fire on Friday night. According to the country's Minister of Climate Crisis and Civil Protection, the fire burned some 3,000 acres of Hydra Island's pine forest. 6 airplanes and 2 teams of firefighters were required to extinguish the blaze. The 53-meter super yacht reportedly costs around $320,000 a week to hire. Protesters in Brazil marched in Rio de Janeiro on Sunday to demonstrate against stricter laws criminalizing abortion in Brazil. The bill, proposed by conservative lawmakers, would make it illegal to terminate a pregnancy after 22 weeks, labeling the action homicide, punishable by up to 20 years in prison. Demonstrators included carnival groups and women dressed in white bonnets and red cloaks, representing characters from The Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood's dystopian novel set in a patriarchal theocracy. The bill needs to be passed by Brazil's lower house, although no date has been set yet. Currently, abortion in Brazil is only legal in cases of rape or if there is a clear risk to the mother's life, with the punishment of up to 3 years in prison for illegal abortions. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Today we have rain in the forecast for southern parts of the country, dropping 10 to 20 millimeters an hour of heavy rain in the late afternoon, along with thunder and lightning. Meanwhile, yellow dust, which is usually seen during spring, could blow into the western parts of the country today. So those in southwestern regions, that's including Gwangju, need to brace for yellow dust rain. The capital area had cloudy skies to start off the new week after yesterday's sudden downpours. But skies are getting sunnier and the heat wave takes a break with a high of 28 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Southern provinces should have highs that are similar to slightly higher than yesterday, topping out at 31 degrees in Daegu. Well, temperatures don't look too bad, but muggy air will make it feel uncomfortable. It will get hotter again as we get into the second half of the week, while monsoon rain returns to certain parts of the country on Wednesday. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, and those are the headlines at this hour. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.